The galaxy was wide and endless, filled with countless stars and empires that rose and fell like waves on a great ocean. Civilizations ruled with pride, building fleets, conquering worlds, and crushing anyone who stood in their way. In this ocean of power, Earth was nothing more than a small island, barely noticed, barely respected. To many alien leaders, humanity was fragile, a young species still clinging to hope and courage while standing against giants. Whispers traveled through the stars. "The humans are weak," alien merchants said. "Their weapons are outdated. Their fleet's too small. If Earth resists, it will be crushed." Even generals of the great empires laughed at the thought of war with humanity. To them, humans were reckless dreamers, explorers with fragile bones and short lives, daring to stand in a universe that would swallow them whole. But those whispers did not tell the full story. In the shadows of deep space, far from alien spies, humanity had been building something. Not just another warship, not just another fleet. Something greater, something that would change how the galaxy saw them forever. It was called the Thunder-Soul Battleship. Its name alone carried the weight of storms and fury. Its engines glowed brighter than suns, and its hull was built with metals forged in secret, layered with technology no empire outside Earth had ever touched. The galaxy did not know of its existence. They thought humanity was still small, still weak. They were wrong. The first sign came when the alien coalition was formed. 5 empires, each powerful in their own right, decided to strike at humanity together. They told themselves it would be simple. A single sweep of their fleets, a single show of force, and humanity would bow. Their admirals prepared grand speeches for victory, and their soldiers celebrated in advance. They were certain Earth would fall. Their fleets gathered near the outer colonies, filling the dark with warships. The stars were covered with lines of metal, glowing weapons, and banners of empires that had crushed countless others. Alien leaders sent one final message to Earth: surrender or be erased. Humanity gave no reply. Inside the command deck of the core, Thunder-Soul Battleship, silence ruled. Officers stood at their stations, calm but tense, eyes fixed on the screens showing enemy movements. The ship itself was vast, so large that its shadow could block moons. Its design was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, a crescent-shaped spear of silver and steel, lit by streams of blue light running across its hull like veins of fire. Its thrusters burned with the fury of stars, yet it waited, watching, silent. The crew knew what was at stake. Earth was not fighting for glory. Earth was fighting for survival. If the aliens succeeded, humanity would vanish. Families, cities, entire worlds would burn. There was no second chance. Still, fear did not fill the Thunder-Soul. Only determination. Only silence. On the other side, the alien coalition grew restless. They expected fear. They expected surrender. But all they saw was one ship drifting in the void, waiting. To them, it was arrogance, madness, or desperation. Their commanders laughed again, giving orders to prepare for the final strike. Yet in the back of their minds, doubt began to grow. Why was humanity so calm? Why was this ship not fleeing, not begging, not hiding? The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The Thunder-Soul Battleship powered up its core. Deep inside its heart, reactors roared to life, humming with energy, so powerful it shook space around it. Lights along its hull burned brighter, like lightning crawling across the skin of a storm. Every officer aboard felt the vibration through the decks, a reminder of the weapon they carried. Still, the ship did not fire. The aliens prepared their weapons. Thousands of cannons locked onto the Thunder-Soul. Missiles armed themselves. Energy, beams charged. The coalition was ready to unleash fire powerful enough to shatter planets. Their admirals raised their voices, confident, declaring victory before the first shot was fired. And then it happened. The Thunder-Soul turned slightly, its weapons locking onto the enemy fleet. Its massive hull gleamed under distant starlight. In that moment, every alien commander felt a chill. Something about the way it moved, the way it aimed, carried a weight far beyond anything they had seen before. One alien soldier whispered, "That is no ordinary ship." Still the orders were given. Still the fleets prepared to fire. But within the human warship, the voice of the commander was steady, calm, and certain. His words carried across the crew, quiet, but filled with power. "Hold position. Let them make the first move." The crew obeyed. Silence held. The galaxy waited. The first shot would decide everything. The alien coalition prepared to fire. But what they did not understand was this. The Thunder-Soul Battleship was not simply a weapon. It was a message, a warning written in fire and steel. A storm waiting to be unleashed. When it finally struck, the stars themselves would tremble. The challenge, the fleets of the coalition stretched across the stars like an endless wall of fire. Thousands of warships, each armed with weapons forged to tear planets apart, moved in perfect formation. Their admirals had fought dozens of wars, crushed countless rebellions, and erased weaker species without thought. To them, humanity was no different. They sent their first demand once more. A cold voice transmitted through the void. "Surrender. Hand over your colonies, your fleets, and your world. Refuse, and you will burn." No reply came. Instead, the Thunder-Soul Battleship glided forward, silent and unshaken. It was only one ship, but its presence filled the void like an empire of its own. The crescent-shaped vessel glimmered with streams of blue light, its engines flaring brighter with each moment. The sight unsettled even the most hardened alien commanders. On the bridge of the Coalition's flagship, Admiral Valor narrowed his eyes. His people had conquered systems with far stronger fleets than Earth's. Yet as he studied the human vessel, he felt a weight he could not explain. It was not size alone. It was not the glowing veins of energy across its surface. It was something else, something deeper, an aura that no machine should carry. Still, pride drowned his unease. He raised his hand and gave the command. "Advance. Box them in. Show them what defiance costs." The alien warships began to close their circle around the Thunder-Soul. Their shadows overlapped in the dark, their weapons warming, their engines blazing trails of fire across the void. Inside the Thunder-Soul, humanity waited. The crew moved with quiet precision, eyes fixed on their stations, hands steady on controls. The commander stood at the center, watching the swarm of alien ships gather. He did not rush. He did not flinch. "Hold position," he ordered. A younger officer turned, voice tight with worry. "Sir, they are surrounding us." The commander's expression did not change. His voice was calm, steady as stone. "Let them. The galaxy is watching. Let them believe we are trapped." And so they waited. The alien coalition could not understand this silence. To them, prey always panicked when the jaws closed. Yet the human warship remained still, its engines burning bright but motionless. Confusion rippled across the alien fleets. Were the humans truly so arrogant, or were they hiding something? The admirals laughed to mask their unease. "They think one ship can stand against us? They have gone mad." But one captain, older than the rest, spoke quietly to his crew. "No one builds a ship like that unless they mean to use it. Do not underestimate them." His words were ignored. The circle grew tighter. The Thunder-Soul was now surrounded on all sides, weapons locked. Thousands of cannons and launchers prepared to unleash fire that could erase moons. To the aliens, the battle was already won. They only needed to give the final command. Yet even as the trap closed, unease grew heavier. The Thunder-Soul's hull shimmered faintly, lines of energy crawling brighter across its frame as though the ship itself was alive. Its silent defiance pierced deeper than any roar. In the command deck of the alien flagship, Admiral Valor clenched his fist. Something in his chest twisted with unease, but he shoved it down. "Enough waiting. Signal the fleet. At my word, fire." The order traveled across the formation. Alien gunners tightened grips. Pilots braced in their cockpits, targeting systems, locked with precision. All that remained was the final word. But then the Thunder-Soul moved. It was not a charge, not a desperate attempt to flee. It was only a slight shift, a calm tilt of its crescent wings, its weapons aligning with terrifying patience. In that moment, the void seemed to darken. The alien crews felt it, a chill running down their spines. The Thunder-Soul had chosen its targets. One alien captain whispered into the silence of his bridge. "That is not the movement of prey. That is the movement of a predator." Still, the admirals forced laughter. Still, they told themselves it was only one ship. Their pride blinded them, and yet across the galaxy, messages already carried rumor. The first shot would decide the fate of worlds, and the aliens, blinded by pride, prepared to make it. The first strike. The alien coalition held its breath. Thousands of ships, thousands of weapons, all locked onto the single human battleship that stood in silence. The void was charged with energy as though the stars themselves were waiting. Then came the order. Fire. From the alien fleets, the darkness lit up with fury. Beams of light, missiles trailing fire, and shells of plasma streaked toward the Thunder-Soul. The assault was endless, a storm of weapons meant to break a world. The void itself seemed to burn. But the Thunder-Soul did not break. Its shields flared to life, a sphere of radiant energy glowing brighter than the sun's. Beams shattered against it. Missiles dissolved into sparks, and plasma shells melted into nothing. The storm that could have destroyed planets ended at its surface, powerless. Inside the alien flagships, silence filled the command decks. The admirals stared with disbelief. Every calculation had promised victory. Every weapon had promised death. And yet, the Thunder-Soul still floated in the void, unshaken, untouched. On the human warship's bridge, the commander gave one word: return fire. The order traveled through the ship. Deep within its core, reactors roared. Energy gathered, pulsing like a heart ready to burst. Along the wings of the crescent-shaped vessel, weapons came alive, glowing brighter than lightning. Then the Thunder-Soul struck. A single beam, pure and blinding, erupted from its hull. It crossed the void in an instant, slicing through the enemy fleet like a blade through paper. Entire squadrons vanished in silence, their ships torn apart before alarms could even sound. Hulls cracked, engines exploded, crews were swallowed by fire. One beam, only one, and dozens of warships were gone. The galaxy had never seen such a weapon. It was not just destruction, it was precision. It was power that belonged to storms and gods, not mortals. Panic spread across the alien fleets. Orders shouted over comms turned to screams. Captains begged for retreat. Soldiers stared out of their viewports, paralyzed by the sight of their comrades erased in seconds. The admirals tried to rally them. "Hold your positions. It is only one ship." But their voices shook. Their eyes betrayed the truth. One ship had just broken an army. The Thunder-Soul fired again. Another beam cut through the void, and another wall of ships disappeared. Explosions bloomed like suns across the battlefield, tearing through formations, leaving debris drifting like ashes in the dark. What had been a wall of fire was now a broken field of ruin. And still, the Thunder-Soul advanced. Its engines glowed, brighter, its weapons pulsed with energy, its shields unbroken. To the aliens, it did not look like a machine. It looked like a living storm, a predator unleashed upon prey that had mocked it too long. On one alien bridge, a captain whispered, his voice trembling, This is not war. This is execution." The word spread, carried by fear. Across the fleets, panic grew. Some ships tried to retreat, turning their engines away from the monster before them, but retreat only made them easier targets. The Thunder-Soul's weapons tracked them with perfect precision, beams lancing out to shatter their hulls before they could flee. The void was filled with wreckage. Broken ships spun into the darkness. Fires burned without air, and the screams of dying fleets faded into silence. Back on the Thunder-Soul, the commander stood unmoved. His officers did not cheer. They did not smile. They only worked, calm and relentless, as though the destruction of an armada was only another task to complete. Because to them, it was not about glory. It was survival. The galaxy had forced their hand, and now the galaxy would learn fear. The Thunder-Soul's voice broadcast across the battlefield, cold and steady, carried into every alien ship that still lived. You fired first. Now you see the cost. For the aliens, the message was heavier than the weapons. It was not a roar of victory. It was not arrogance. It was a truth spoken with the weight of certainty. Across the surviving fleets, fear turned to despair. Commanders, who had once mocked humanity, now felt their throats tighten with dread. They had thought Earth weak. They had thought humans fragile. But this was no fragile species. This was no weak world. This was a warning. The Thunder-Soul unleashed one more strike, the largest yet. Energy gathered at its core, light spilling across its hull, brighter and brighter until it burned like a newborn star. Then it fired, a beam so vast it cut across the entire formation of ships. Dozens more vessels vanished in an instant, reduced to drifting fragments. And then, silence. The alien coalition, once so proud, once so certain, was broken. The survivors drifted in shock, their weapons quiet, their hearts hollow. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, glowing in the light of distant stars. The Thunder-Soul powered down its weapon systems. It did not chase. It did not gloat. It simply stood in the void, silent and unshaken, surrounded by the ruins of those who had challenged it. For the first time in history, the galaxy had learned fear of humanity. But what none of them yet understood was this. The Thunder-Soul was not humanity's only weapon. It was only the first. Fear across the stars. The wreckage of the battle still drifted in the void, silent tombs of once proud fleets. Beacons flashed weakly from broken hulls, survivors floating in shattered vessels, their voices trembling as they sent desperate messages into the dark. Some begged for rescue. Some cursed their own admirals. Most simply wept, unable to understand how one ship had destroyed them all. But beyond the battlefield, the galaxy was listening. News spread faster than any beam of light. Merchant convoys carried the stories. Pirate outposts repeated the rumors. Spies sent urgent reports to their masters. Entire networks of information pulsed with one name: the Thunder-Soul Battleship. At first, the reports were dismissed. Lies. Alien leaders scoffed. Exaggerations. Humanity cannot build such power. But then the fragments arrived. Broken ships towed back by survivors, their hulls scarred by impossible beams. Recordings of entire squadrons vanishing in an instant. Black boxes filled with final cries of commanders who had believed they were victorious. Denial turned to unease. Unease turned to fear. On the throne world of the Jal Dominion, the Grand Regent listened to his council argue. "This cannot be true," one said. Perhaps it was an ambush. Perhaps humanity used hidden fleets. Another countered, "We have the evidence. It was one ship against thousands." The regent sat in silence, his claws tapping against the arm of his throne. He remembered the arrogance with which he had once dismissed Earth, calling it a backwater planet of dreamers. Now he wondered if he had mocked a storm. In the chambers of the Triarchate, where three rulers shared power, fear poisoned their unity. One demanded immediate war, another called for retreat, the third whispered of negotiation. Their voices clashed, their alliances cracked, and their people watched in terror as their leaders revealed their uncertainty. Even on distant worlds, far from the war, ordinary citizens felt the tremor. Traders whispered in markets. "Did you hear? A human ship erased an entire fleet." Soldiers murmured in training halls. "If one battleship can do this, what chance do we have?" Parents told their children stories, not of monsters in the dark, but of a human warship glowing like a sun, a weapon that punished those who dared to threaten Earth. The fear was not just in the empires that had fought humanity. It was everywhere. Some tried to resist the tide of panic. The High Lord of the Sarek Enclave declared, "This is only a trick. Humanity seeks to frighten us with illusions. We will not bow." Yet even as he spoke, his own generals looked away, doubt etched across their faces. On the human homeworld, Earth, the people stood in silence as news reached them. There were no parades, no cheers. The images of burning alien fleets did not bring joy. They brought relief, heavy and grim. Families whispered prayers for the crew of the Thunder-Soul, knowing those men and women had carried the weight of survival. For them all, humanity had not built its greatest warship for conquest. It had built it to survive. But the galaxy did not see it that way. To the empires, the Thunder-Soul was not a shield. It was a sword. They imagined fleets of such ships rising from Earth, each one capable of ending civilizations. They saw their thrones shaking, their power crumbling, their centuries of dominance undone by a species they had once laughed at. And so, fear grew into something else. Hatred. Alien leaders who could not accept their defeat began to plot in secret. "If humanity has one Thunder-Soul," they whispered, "then we must strike before they build more." Others shook their heads, knowing another war would bring only greater ruin. But fear is a seed that grows quickly, and already it was spreading through every empire, every world, every throne. Back aboard the Thunder-Soul, the crew watched the stars in silence. Their commander stood at the bridge, his eyes calm but heavy. He knew what was coming. The battle was won, but the war was not over. The galaxy would not forget what they had seen. Some would retreat, some would kneel, and some would come again, driven by desperation or pride. He spoke softly to his officers. "They know now. They will fear us. But fear can turn to hate. We must be ready." The Thunder-Soul floated like a silent guardian, surrounded by the wreckage of its enemies, its weapons still glowing faintly. To the crew, it was a shield for Earth. To the galaxy, it was a nightmare waiting in the dark. Whispers carried farther with each passing day. Worlds far beyond the reach of war began to speak of humanity with new voices. No longer weak, no longer fragile. Now they were the storm. Now they were the predator. Now they were the shadow at the edge of every empire's dreams. And in the deepest halls of alien power, rulers gathered in secret councils. Some urged surrender, some begged for alliances, and some demanded extermination. But all of them agreed on one truth. The Thunder-Soul Battleship had changed the galaxy. Still, no one yet knew humanity's full strength. No one yet knew how many more weapons Earth had hidden. And no one yet understood the truth that made the Thunder-Soul so terrifying, because it was not only a weapon, it was a promise that if humanity was ever threatened again, the stars themselves would burn. The lesson: the galaxy held its breath in the days that followed the battle. Across distant worlds, across markets and courts and battle stations, whispers of the Thunder-Soul spread like fire. Some rulers denied the truth, but their soldiers had seen it. Some tried to dismiss it as luck, but wreckage from the coalition fleets floated as proof. And some, wiser than the rest, simply stayed silent, watching and waiting, knowing that the universe had shifted forever. The alien coalition that had once laughed at humanity now trembled in silence. The few ships that survived limped back to their empires, carrying broken crews who spoke of beams of light that cut through entire formations, of shields that could not be broken, of a human commander who stood calm while empires crumbled. Those voices were not stories. They were warnings. On Earth, the Thunder-Soul returned in silence. The ship docked above the homeworld, its massive frame still carrying the scars of battle, though none had pierced its heart. Families wept in relief when they saw it. They knew that if the ship had fallen, Earth would have followed. There were no cheers of conquest. There was only gratitude and a deep, quiet understanding. Humanity had survived because it had been ready to face the storm. But survival carried a cost. The human council gathered, their faces grave. They knew the galaxy had changed. Fear had given humanity a shield, but it had also painted a target on their backs. More wars would come, more fleets would rise. Every alien throne now debated not if humanity should be destroyed, but how soon they must try. And so the council spoke with one voice, sending a message into the void. A message broadcast to every world, every empire, every fleet. The words were simple. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek thrones. We seek only peace. But if you bring war to Earth again, if you cross humanity's path once more, then remember the Thunder-Soul. Remember what you saw, and know this. Our first strike was mercy. Our next will not be. The raw message echoed across the stars. Some rulers mocked it, calling it arrogance. Others whispered that it was wisdom. But none could ignore it. The image of the Thunder-Soul, burning with light in the darkness, haunted their dreams. In taverns on far-off stations, smugglers lowered their voices when speaking of Earth. In the halls of empires, generals stared at maps of human space, their hands shaking as they tried to imagine sending fleets against the storm again. Parents on alien worlds told their children, "Never anger the humans." The galaxy had learned its lesson. For centuries, empires had ruled with fire and iron, believing themselves unshakable. They had mocked humanity, calling them fragile, calling them fools. But now, the smallest of them had shown that survival could be sharper than conquest, and that desperation could forge weapons greater than pride. The Thunder-Soul Battleship became more than a warship. It became a legend. Stories spread faster than truth, but every tale carried the same warning. Some said it was forged in the heart of a star. Some said it carried the souls of storms within its hull. Some said its commander did not age, a sentinel, bound to protect Earth for eternity. No matter the tale, the message was the same. To cross humanity was to face ruin. On the ship itself, the commander stood on the bridge, watching Earth turn slowly below. He felt no triumph, only the weight of what had been unleashed. His officers stood with him in silence, knowing their strike had saved their world, but also knowing it had changed them. "We will not be forgotten," the commander said quietly. And he was right. Even as fear hardened into hatred in the halls of alien rulers, even as coalitions whispered of striking again, they did so with trembling voices, with hands that shook, with minds that remembered the ruin of their fleets. The galaxy had thought humanity weak. The galaxy had thought Earth fragile. But now, when alien children looked up at the stars, they did not dream of adventure. They dreamed of a shape glowing with blue fire, a crescent spear that turned empires to dust. The Thunder-Soul floated, in silence above its world, waiting. It did not need to roar. It did not need to move. Its very existence was enough, because the galaxy had already learned. It had learned that humanity's patience was not weakness. It had learned that humanity's silence was not surrender. And it had learned in fire and ruin that the first strike of the Thunder-Soul was only the beginning. And so the stars themselves carried the lesson, etched in fear, whispered in every corner of the cosmos. To cross humanity was madness.